And that's the mentality that I'm getting now, especially now that I'm past 50, because everything is going to stay behind. Everything that you built, right? It's going to stay behind. And the worst part is, if you get to be 75, like you said, or 80, you may have all the money in the world, but you might not be able to enjoy life anymore because of your health condition. Welcome to the Break Free Podcast. I am your host, David Mancella. As everybody knows, this podcast is dedicated to interviewing people that have made this world a better place through their businesses and their lives. Today we have with us Mickey. Mickey, welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
For the audience, can you tell me your full name, where do you live, and what do you do for a living?
My name is Mickey Landesberg. I live in the Valley in California, and I currently own and operate a senior home care agency.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful, and I would love to see how you got there, because after doing your interview, when I met you, I realized that you have moved there a lot, and you landed into entrepreneurship, and it has changed your life dramatically. And this is what this show is about. Show people that it's possible, that anything that they can put in their mind, they can actually do it if they have enough strength and courage, right?
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. And yeah, it's been a long journey to get here. I never really saw myself as being a business owner. Because prior to starting this business, I was really deeply involved in corporate America. I actually am Canadian, and I started in Toronto. And I began my career working in home entertainment, which is like VHS videos, and selling them into the rental stores. At the time, Blockbuster and Ambassador Video and all of the different ones. And that's how I got my foot in the door in the entertainment business. And eventually I found my way to working for Columbia TriStar, Sony Pictures in Toronto. And, fast forward a couple of years, they eventually moved me out here to California, where I worked for Sony Pictures here in Culver City. Los Angeles, and I had a pretty long, extensive career. I was with Sony for about 15 years, and I'm with a couple of other studios, probably amounting to about 10 years altogether. So 25 years in the entertainment business. But in and around 2014, the industry was changing, particularly my aspect of the industry. People were turning to streaming and not so much DVD and VHS anymore. So times had changed, and I found myself as being, a senior executive that was older, and really in my industry, there was nothing really left for me, and I found myself hard to employ. I was the high-priced help.
Right.
So I did a lot of soul searching at that time, and I was going through a bit of tumult in my personal life as well, with different things that were going on with my family back in Toronto and here in California. But ultimately, I know I'm making a long story longer, but I had a good friend that I worked with at Sony at the time. We left Sony about the same time in 2011. And he immediately jumped into home care. He's a little bit older than me, and he kind of read the writing on the wall and realized that it was time for him to break free and do his own thing. I was a little bit more reluctant. I thought I still had something to give to the industry. So he jumped into it, and then a few years later, when I found myself in the same situation, looking for something to do and unemployed, he reached out to me, and we talked about getting into business together. And he's a good friend, and I always had an opinion about getting into business with friends or family that would lead to not necessarily good things, and there was nothing keeping me from jumping into the same franchise family as him. So he was kind enough to sort of open his books to me to show me that it was a good business to be in. Generally speaking, my life's circumstances kind of directed me there because, one of the events that happened to me was that both my parents passed away in 2014, in relatively close proximity to one another, 8 days apart. So I found myself, feeling a lot of guilt that I wasn't in Toronto to care for my parents as they got older. My kids were getting older at the time and becoming more independent. So my wife at the time was also getting concerned about what she was going to do with her life. And she was very petrified of, she really had been a stay-home mom. So she was really worried about getting back into the workforce and not sure about what she'd be qualified to do. But she was a caregiver before we got married. So, everything seemed to align and it seemed to be the right industry for us to go into. So that's what we did. In 2015, I purchased a franchise and I've been in business ever since. And it's been, the first couple of years were a bit of a struggle, but, things are thriving at this point.
You talk about this so casually. And this is for the audience because you gave me a quick review of your professional life. But people don't realize the blood that you shed, the muscles that you had to build. I was in corporate for 10 years. And breaking out of that was the hardest thing I ever done. Because you lose the corner office, you lose the reputation, among your corporation, and the security of the paycheck, the paid vacations, the bonuses at the end of the year. Right?
It's all of that. And you know what? And that was the biggest shock for me because you make a really good point. It was all I knew at the time, before I left it. And then I kind of felt like I lost my identity.
Yeah.
I didn't know who I was anymore and, how I was perceived by other people because, I found myself, around the house in the afternoon and taking the kids to school and doing, things. And I'm not used to seeing that. And I grew up in an environment and even my adult life where, being part of the corporate lifestyle was just part of my day-to-day routine. It was really my identity. And I really struggled with that. But now, I found a new routine and I feel, far more in control of my life and my own destiny. And it's not really left up to other people to decide, what my future is going to hold. It's my own.
And it's exactly, you're describing what happened to me. At the beginning, I think for me was a little bit harder because I was inventing a new company. When you get into a franchise situation, by the way, for the audience, learn from the experts and take the shortcuts. If you find a franchise that it has already a business model that has been proven, even though it's going to cost you to get into that business model because you have to pay for that knowledge, right? It's going to save you at least 5 to 10 years of struggling with your own business model. That's what I found, because you're not the first one. And actually, my last job as a corporate executive was working for a company that had 500 franchise stores in the country, in Canada. And they were almost $1 billion company. And so I learned the franchising model. And these people, most of these people that bought into this franchise became millionaires within 5 years. They will get in, they will get the training, they will get the model, they will obey the rules. And, some of them will have 4 or 5 stores.
Yeah.
And I'm this is crazy, right? It's amazing.
Yeah, it's very true. But it doesn't mean it doesn't come with a lot of hard work.
Oh, of course,
Because they have the program in place, the sort of the recipe for success, it still takes a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to make it happen. Especially in the early years, because in order to be profitable, you have to do everything yourself.
Exactly.
Before you can start hiring people, to run more. So it's definitely not passive income unless, the franchise model is set up that way, but usually that costs a lot more.
Yeah.
I agree with you. It certainly shortens the route to success. That doesn't mean in hindsight, if I were to do things all over again and enter the same industry, now knowing what I know and how to run a business and how to run this particular business in this industry, whether I would engage in a franchise environment or not, that's another question for another day. But, it took me, 7 years to get to this point where I feel like I really don't need the franchise system anymore,
right,
to operate a successful business. But I certainly did at the time. I did not know anything about the industry or how to run it, or let alone to be a business owner and operate my own business.
Yeah, so the way I see it is, you did it perfectly. The way I see it is, a lot of people go to school for business, then they get an MBA, trying to get into their own business, and then they go into an incubator. And before you know, you're probably spending the same amount of time and money learning to become an entrepreneur, where you can learn it from somebody that already has a formula to give you the guiding rails, if you will. Or in my case, I just said, okay, I know how to write software, and I'm pretty good at it, and I know how to be a leader because I was, I was a senior person in a large corporation. Let's do it, right? But it's not. Oh my God, I almost went bankrupt 5 times, 4 or 5 times. And
sure.
It's not, by the way, talking back about the passive income idea, I have spent the last 10 years trying to figure out a passive income model. And I have figured it out. Okay. But it's not passive income. What I want to say, though, to the audience, the illusion is that you can create passive income and watch TV all day. That doesn't exist. It doesn't. Because if you don't put attention to your investments, they go away and you lose everything.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, you have to mind the store. Nothing comes for free. And you have to watch it. And that's, one of the things and the biggest transitions from going from, the corporate American model to running your own business is that you always knew when you were working in corporate that there'd be somebody else to do these certain particular tasks, whether it was HR, whether it was whatever, you could always toss it, or, you had a corporate lawyer if you run into trouble. When you run your own business, you have to wear every hat in the place, including the janitorial services to clean up the office space, So yeah, it comes with a lot of work, and certainly there are aspects of even my business that generate passive income, but still it requires me to stay on top of everything.
Yeah.
To make sure that flow still comes in.
Your career is admirable because not only you run your own life or your own business, but you actually became an executive in large corporations. So let's talk about that a little bit, because this podcast is about breaking free, and that means different things about different people. There is nothing wrong with doing a corporate career and get to the top like you did, right? And there is also nothing wrong to figure out a way to run your own business. The definition of freedom for people is different. Some people feel trapped in their own business and they think it's a jail. And some people feel trapped in a corporate job and they feel that's a jail. So how do you actually make it from the bottom to the top in the corporate world?
How did I make it to the bottom?
Yeah.
Hard work, reliability, at least early on, I never made waves, and what you have to do in the corporate world is, surround yourself with an entourage of people that'll help lift you. That's really an important aspect of the corporate environment, because regardless of how we try and avoid it, there's always some level of politics involved, and different people in power. So you always have to associate yourself with the right circle of people in order to grow your career. That's the way I found. And really that was the story of my career. I made a close relationship with the person that ran the studio. At the time, it was Columbia TriStar in Canada, and he ran the show in Canada, and he originally hired me in Toronto. And we became close, and he became, he hired me as a salesperson to sell DVDs into the Blockbusters of the world. But then that industry started changing, and we started selling less into the rental market, but more into like stores like Walmart, where people were buying DVDs directly. And so the sales technique had to change, because you weren't selling to, Blockbuster anymore. You were selling to Walmart, and that's an entirely different animal. That's really packaged, consumer packaged goods. So early on, I kind of demonstrated that, the way my mind worked, I was a far better analytical person than I was a salesperson. And really, mass market selling is really more analytical. You have to understand your statistics, you got to understand your inventory turn rates, you got to understand a lot of different factors that are important to the profitability of the mass merchant like Walmart. And the different distribution methodology. We went from, just selling in boxes of video to, vendor managed inventory, where, Walmart themselves didn't cut POs. We had the right to cut our own POs and send in product as it got scanned out and it needed to be refilled on the shelves. So that model was entirely different than the traditional sales model at the time. And my mind just was there for it. So I became close with the person that ran the operation in Toronto. He eventually got moved to a senior sales position at Sony Pictures in California. And then about a year and a half later, he convinced me to move out there with my family to join him in an operations capacity. And that's really how I ascended. I've learned all the different aspects from video distribution, from sales to certainly distribution and operations and marketing, and as well as accounting. So I worked in all the different aspects of it. So I somehow became the subject matter expert. So every time we rolled in a new crew of consultants to, reevaluate how we're doing things, I was always the point person that was called upon to be the subject matter expert to provide them information. And, slowly and over the years, my career grew from, regional sales manager to, I became a senior vice president of sales operations at Sony Pictures. And it was great. The pay was great. The benefits were great. I had a nice office, parking spot of my own, it was really, really great. I had a big, huge 401k building up, and I thought it wouldn't end.
Right.
But like everything, change comes along and your entourage kind of disappears. And once, those people that help support you and grow you within the industry, it was ultimately my loyalty to them that eventually led to my departure from the industry.
Interesting.
Because, I chose not to leave them when there were opportunities along the way, because 25 years is a long career. So different things happen along the way. In my career, during the 15 years at Sony, I did have opportunities to do different things. Hindsight's 2020. I probably should have, but I didn't. I stayed loyal to the cast of people that helped bring me to where I was. And ultimately, they found themselves out before I did. And once I lost my support network, in a big corporate environment, then, you become expendable, So, and that was a big realization for me. We get back to that identity thing, and I had to start questioning, who am I really?
Yeah.
I stayed true to my morals and my ethics about loyalty and all that, but where did it get me? And, am I really this corporate suit guy, or am I something a little bit different? Does it matter what I do, to how I feel emotionally about it? And I got to say, I didn't think so when I first started this. I was just trying to survive. But there's a lot, it's far more rewarding, providing a service to people that are in need than it is to sell DVDs. I get that thank you that I've made a difference in somebody's life, not that they have a DVD of Scarface on their shelf,
exactly,
that they don't watch anymore. So, that part of it is sort of recalibrated to really who I am, and the things that I find rewarding. Now, I'm not making as much money as I did when I was in corporate America yet. The business continues to grow, so hopefully I will get to that point at some point soon. But you know what? It's been a pretty good journey, and I gotta say, I wish I would have done it earlier.
Right.
Because I'm in control of my life now. And, if I want to go golfing tomorrow afternoon, I'm going to go golfing tomorrow afternoon.
Exactly.
And that's the kind of freedom that's priceless. You
nailed it. Talking about DVDs and Blu-rays, my dad was a fan of collecting, Blu-rays and DVDs. And when he passed away, he left his collection to me. And, this is my private office. And if you look at those shelves behind, they're full.
With DVDs?
I never watched any of them, but it's like, it's a reminder.
Nobody ever did. I used to sit there at my desk all the time and say, who's buying this stuff? Because the dirty little secret in the movie business was that, 98% of the movies that ever came out never needed to be seen a second time.
Exactly.
So, we used to always ask that question. But you know what? That's part of the identity thing, right? People, the bookshelves full of DVDs is like the old bookshelf. It kind of, for many people, it kind of represented who they were.
Yeah.
Right? This is my, and you keep them on your shelf probably because it reminds you of your father.
That's the only one. There's no reason why. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I totally get it. I totally get the aspect of it. But like I said, I'm happy that you have, DVDs on your shelf, and I'm sure that there's probably a lot of Sony Pictures ones on there as well. But it's so much better to be able to just, get a phone call from somebody and say, you really made a difference in my mom's life before she passed away. You guys were there for me.
And now we're moving towards purpose, right? The main purpose in a man's life, like you and I, is provide for our family. Right? And that gets you into a job or into a business early on in your career. But as you move up and you become an expert, a professional, your life purpose needs to change. Because if it doesn't change, you're still trying to provide for your family, which you already have done abundantly. And the whole identity thing, it happened to me twice. For me, it was like you, the hardest, because I was in a corporate environment for so many years. I really liked it. I learned how to play the politics. I was always in technology. So it was a little bit different than the rest of the departments. So I was somewhat shielded from the office politics. But I thrived in it. I learned, I also come from military background. So I always looked at the corporate world as a military organization where you have rankings and you need to go up, right? And you have to specialize.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when I decided to leave, like you too, I should have left 5 years earlier. But my identity was my job. And that's very dangerous. And you know what happened to me after that? And I get the shivers. My business became my identity. So ISU, my main company I thought I was my main company. And both are terrible because that's how people commit suicide when a crisis comes. Right? Some people, they get fired and they're like, this is the end of their life because they think they are their job. Or same, your business goes bankrupt and you're like, okay, I have no more purpose in life. So it's super dangerous. You are not your business and you are not your job. You're actually a child of the Most High God. You are a miracle. The fact that you have, breath and you can eat and you can walk, it's a miracle. Right? You're a walking miracle. We all are.
Yeah, sure.
And when you change your purpose, like I look at your face and I see how happy you are. And I know it's not as easy as it was before in the corporate world, but you're providing value to a person, to somebody that says, thank you, because what you do is making my life better.
That's right. Right. Until they get the bill.
Well, we live in an
It's not
economic
cheap.
society, right?
Yeah, I know. Sadly, it's not cheap, and it is an eye opener. That's what, with all the positives, and it certainly are. Another, aspect that this particular industry has taught me, and I think we touched on it a little bit before in our pre-interview, was that the nature of my business. I'm seeing people not in the best part of their lives, right? At the end of their lives. And for me, it's a real eye opener, because I never really stared my mortality in the face. I always thought I'd be young forever. And now I kind of see the aging process and how indiscriminate it is. It doesn't matter what you did, how successful you were, what accomplishments you made. You're going to get older, and you might be afflicted in different ways, and it's a very scary proposition, because we do have an aging population. And, if you, outside of, long-term care insurance, for example, you have to pay for it out of your pocket. And it's not cheap. It's not cheap to get old. So when somebody tells you getting old isn't for sissies, they really mean it. It's a struggle, not only for the people that are getting older, but the families that are around them. So, I always find the time to talk to the family members to make sure that they, evaluate their own life and measure it. And while they're still able to enjoy their lives, they can just get into a plane and go to Europe and go walking around and see the tourist sites. It's the luxury that they have right now when they're 50. When they get to 75, as much as they still want to do it because their brain is telling them that they're still young, their body's not going to allow it so easily, or you might need somebody to be with you to make sure you don't have a fall or something like that. So I always remind them that it's really important to enjoy your life while you can.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and like if you look at the Bible says we come naked and we live naked, and that's exactly what happens. And everything in between, it doesn't matter. So
that's just the journey, that's just the journey of your life goes in all sorts of different directions. It's not a straight line.
My niece she's got a scholarship in college. She's a young lady, and she had this amazing opportunity to go to Greece. And she was talking to her mom, because for her going to Greece was going to mean to deplete her savings. And then her mom told her, you have no idea when you're going to get this opportunity again. And that experience you're going to remember forever. The money, you can grow it again. So right now she's in Greece for 3 weeks, right? And that's the mentality that I'm getting now, especially now that I'm past 50, because everything is going to stay behind. Everything that you built, right? It's going to stay behind. And the worst part is, if you get to be 75, like you said, or 80, you may have all the money in the world, but you might not be able to enjoy life anymore because of your health condition.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. That's right. And, and it's a challenge that, like I said, it does not matter. I've had clients from all walks of life, that you would think that they're impervious to getting old. But it doesn't work that way. Our clock starts ticking the minute we're born, and so, yeah, it is really important. And, and how you live your life in between those points plays a big role too. The pressures that you put on your mind and your body and your spirit, can really wear on people, because I have clients that are approaching 100 and they're still dancing in the streets because of their attitude. They just are young and they're, young of heart. And then I have people that are 80 that, they have a hard time getting out of bed any day of the week. And it's just typically because of the way they, the events of their lives and how they lived them and the stress that they were under. But more importantly, at the point when they get to retirement age, it's what do they do when they have to retire? Do they go sit on a sofa and start watching TV? Or do they go out and start playing tennis with friends and go for walks and keep their mind active? Genes are genes in our bodies, and biologically, we're predetermined to get different things, I suppose. But I do notice that the people that stay more active in their bodies and their minds tend to, keep it together a lot longer and in much better shape.
And happier, right? At the end of the day, they are happier.
Yeah, we're happier, but you know what? I got to tell you, unhappiness in seniors is far more prevalent than, people just being overjoyed.
Right.
It's difficult. It's difficult. We're all human beings, and we all, our bodies get older and our mind get a little bit more fatigued, but our eyes still see through the young. When you look through the mirror at yourself, you're not seeing the old person, and maybe one day you wake up and you say, who's that person in the mirror? But you still see yourself as when you were, at your best, your teenage years. So that's the challenge, when people know that they're not young anymore. Right. They still feel young in their head, but they just know that they're limited in so many different ways, and they still see the world through the young eyes. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge for many.
Incredible. 7 years in business after being a senior executive, super hard to do. But I know that now you're getting into more relaxing part of your entrepreneur career, as I am. What would you tell yourself 6 years ago? If you could go back in time and talk to yourself when you were starting your business, what would you tell yourself?
Don't do it? No.
That's valid.
Yeah. No, it was, I would probably tell you that, or tell myself that I'd have to tell myself to put the distractions that were going on in my life at the time of starting the business, to allow myself to, commit myself a little bit more, especially in those early years. I did allow some of the stress of my personal life and my journey to refine my identity. It did interfere with, the best practices that I knew I should have been doing in operating the business. Not to mention financially, it was a bit of a struggle too. So I might have done things differently financially for how I financed my business. At the time I used my retirement funds to help start the business. I don't know if I would do that again. I'd probably go to the, SBA loan approach. It's just sort of little things that ended up costing me more money than it should have in the early years and added extra stress to the situation. So that's probably what I would say. And I probably would have, in honesty, I probably would have had the conversation with myself more than 6 years ago. The real opportunity for me to make the jump should have occurred 3 years prior to me starting the business.
Right.
It's when I first left Sony and I still felt that I had something to give to my industry, where I went back and worked for another studio for another 3 years. That was the mistake, right? I got the golden handshake to walk away from my job in corporate America. I should have used that golden handshake money to start the business, and I shouldn't have hesitated. That's what I would tell myself.
Beautiful. But you know what? Despite all the mistakes, you're thriving, right?
It took time, but yeah.
And it's that's how business is, like I've been in business for 18 years. And I told my board, I will never, ever take for granted the sales, the profits, because I've been through so many struggles in my business life that I know it could be taken away in a second. COVID, for example, like we were shut down within a couple of days, and I lost half my clients in a month, right?
Yep.
What do you do, right? So this was like what, 15 years into the business, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's good to live like that because it gives me energy. It's a challenge, and that's what I love about business. It depends on your own effort, right? So if you are into it, you'll make something out of it. But if you don't want to be into it, you'll also slow it down, lose it. Right?
Those are the results you're going to get.
Exactly. Yeah. Full control, right?
Get out what you put in. Yeah.
Mickey, I don't want to abuse your time. Thank you so much for this interview. Let's finish the podcast with one last question.
Sure.
If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway in California, what would you write in it?
About my business or about myself?
About life.
Billboard.
Anything you like.
Let me see. The billboard of my life. I don't know. That's a really tough question. I'd probably put my company's phone number on it in the logo. Say call me, because business is business. So I might as well take, if I'm going to pay for the billboard ad, or maybe I'm getting it for free, I might as well take advantage of it and make a couple bucks.
So talking about that, what's your business name?
My business name is ComForCare Home Care. And what's unique about the business is that, how you had said earlier that, your business isn't your identity. But in this particular case and in this particular industry, there are so many different competitors in this space that the thing that differentiates you from the next person is your identity and the way you approach your business. So, my business is very much a part of my identity now. And that's how I sell it. If I go and I sit down with a client, I'm not selling home care and I'm not selling the caregivers that I send into the home. I'm selling me. I'm saying I'm the person you're going to be talking to. We're going to be partners in this. And it's just really creating an environment of trust. You want to be that trusted advisor. You want to be that extra family member that's willing to do the extra work. And that's how I sell my business, to anybody that I get the opportunity to speak to about it. So I couldn't put that on a billboard because, it wouldn't seem genuine. But, once I start talking to somebody on the telephone or sit down with them in the sofa, that's really what I'm trying to convey. That, you're about to enter in a really challenging time. You want to be surrounded by people you trust.
It's, I almost had an idea for your billboard.
Okay, great.
Say, life is short. Enjoy it while you can. And underneath, ComForCare Home Care.
Yeah. Well, our logo is live your best life possible. So,
there you go. That should be your billboard. Live your best life possible.
That's right.
It's beautiful. So. Mickey, if people like to get in touch with you, talk more about your business or engage in business with you, where can they find you?
You can find me online, ComForCare Home Care. That'll take you to our national website. Of course, if you happen to be in my area, which is Agora Hills or Southern California in the Valley, you can always pick up the phone and call me. I don't know if it's worthwhile giving a phone number or not, but 818-699-1963. And I'm Mickey, and I'll be the one that picks up the phone. And I'm ready and willing to talk to you and, give you guidance. And really, that's the most important thing I can provide. And I provide that for free. The guidance. If somebody has a question about their parents or, they have a concern about a family member and how they're going to care for them and different ways to finance it, or if they wanted to locate them into an assisted living facility, I'm really a very resourceful person. I've really embedded myself into the community, into the Chamber of Commerce. So I understand everything sort of related to senior care.
Beautiful.
So yeah. That's what I would say. Call me if you have questions, you have doubts, and you're worried, and you just need somebody to help you navigate, this difficult next chapter and difficult period in their lives. I'm really happy to talk to anybody.
Beautiful. And I'll make sure our team was going to put that phone number bold and bright on the comment section in this podcast.
Okay, I'll send you I'll send you a JPEG of our logo.
Beautiful. Mickey, thank you so much. God bless you and keep changing this world for a better place.
Thank you very much, David. Nice talking with you.
Bye.
Bye.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.